Thanks for joining me on episode 585 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Jeff Brown from the Read to Lead podcast, challenging you to reach true success in business and in life through consistent and intentional reading. One way to be inspired to success is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, with my friend Scott Mater.
Despite the fact that there's challenges going on, to reach out and find a way of plugging yourself in with a group or a community of like-minded people so that you can pull together and figure out what it is that you should take action on and then hold you accountable to actually taking action, because it's so easy to stall out.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's episode about investing in others through stewarding your treasures, I talk with you about why, with money, taking a moment to breathe is important, how then you need to touch again on your why and your priorities, and then it is time to take action. As we talk about stewarding your treasures, wouldn't it be great if you could support this podcast and do it without costing yourself an extra dime? Turns out you can. All you have to do is use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon when you're ready to make a purchase via Amazon, and a small commission will come back to support the show. If you enjoy the show when you're ready to buy from Amazon, just use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon. Right now, with a lot of changes happening, a lot of chaos, people worried about losing their jobs or perhaps without work right now, one of the things that I want to talk about with money is there's really two different mistakes that I see people make whenever they're in a money emergency. And it really doesn't matter whether this emergency is something like what we've got going on right now, where there's tons of people affected, or whether it's just something that affects you and your family. You know, if you've had the situation where you haven't got an emergency fund, you haven't done the things to prepare financially, and then something comes along that is a financial emergency, even something that has nothing to do, nothing you could have done to prevent it, a medical situation, a job loss, a major accident. There's two common mistakes that happen. One is people that don't pay attention to the signs and the flags early on, and they don't make changes to their lifestyle. They don't look to make changes to their behavior. They just keep acting like everything is normal and go through that until all of a sudden the emergency is not only there, but it's gotten worse. And now they end up having to do drastic things to be able to make those changes. But the second thing that happens that I've also seen is people who make sudden and drastic changes in response to an emergency or something that happens without actually really taking the time to think about it. Where something has happened to them, and because they feel out of control, because they feel like there's nothing they can do about it, they go out and do something massive that ends up making the situation worse. And I want to talk a little bit about what you can do to help prevent that. The first step whenever you've got anything that's happened to you from outside that's causing fear, that's causing worry, is to stop and take a breath. Stop and create a little bit of time and space. Recognize the fact that if someone is pressuring you to make a decision right away, if it's one of these things where it's, if you sign up right now, then you'll get something that you won't get if you wait 24 hours. When you've got that pressure on you to make sudden drastic changes, like, I know if invest in this one stock, it'll turn around overnight and now everything will be taken care of. Or if I sell everything I own, or if I do this or that. Massive, drastic responses to something. If you feel that kind of pressure, you need to create a little bit of space, a little bit of distance. You need to create a chance to breathe, a chance to recognize reality. And then you need to take a step back, and it's what I call being. You need to recognize and respond and write down, what are your non-negotiables? What are the things that are really important to you? What should come first? Feeding your family should really come before paying somebody who, you really want to pay them, but you just can't right now. Or feeding your family and taking care of keeping a roof over your head is more important to you than maybe, I don't know, cable or a private school or whatever. The point isn't that one of these things is good and the other's bad, or one of these things is right and the other's wrong. The point is to take the time to actually figure it out for yourself. What are your values? What's important to you? What are the non-negotiables that you won't give up on and you won't change? Retouch on your why and your priorities and what's really important to you. It's easier to do that if you're not in the middle of an emergency. But the truth is that when those values get tested is often when things are in emergencies. And that's why a lot of times during a time like this is when people begin kind of recognizing, wait a minute, I want to change something about myself. I want to change something about what I'm doing. I want to be or do or provide in a different way. I want to take care of my family in a way that I haven't up to now. Or this is what's really important to me. This is a time where a lot of times we identify those things because that outside pressure, that emergency chips away and throws away all of the superficial stuff that we'd been paying attention to instead. And then last, after you've done those two steps, and only after you've done those two steps, is it time to begin to take action, to figure out what are the steps that I need to do, to focus on those steps, and to take action immediately. And it may be drastic action. It may be that you need to sell your house or you need to sell everything. It may be that you need to make other drastic choices or changes to your lifestyle, but it also may be that you don't need to do those things. This is where seeking outside counsel can be so powerful. Reaching out to people who have been through it before and asking them questions. What would they do differently? What did they do that worked? What did they do that didn't work? This is where seeking somebody who has experience helping people navigate this kind of situation can help. And again, I'm not necessarily talking specifically about the current global situation with the pandemic, but just the idea of dealing with and identifying what's important to you and helping to put a plan together so that you can refocus, gain control, and set a plan with your money and move forward in a much more effective way. This is why at times like this and during emergencies, this is why it's often important, despite the fact that there's challenges going on, to reach out and find a way of plugging yourself in with a group or a community of like-minded people so that you can pull together and figure out what it is that you should take action on, and then hold you accountable to actually taking action, because it's so easy to stall out in a time like this. This is why it's important to surround yourself with your family and your friends and build those relationships and keep them active even during a time of emergency. I've seen so many people withdraw into themselves, and it never helps. So take the moment, breathe, retouch on your why and your priorities, and get back in touch with what's really important to you. And then take massive and decisive action to move forward through the emergency. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of treasures, you can sign up for our treasures tips by going to inspiredstewardship.com/treasures or text in the U.S. 44222 treasures tips. And we'll send you 5 weeks of our best tips on stewarding your treasures. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.